Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to CIO Leadership Live. I'm your host, Mary Fran Johnson, CEO of Mary Fran Johnson Media. Twice a month, we produce CIO Leadership Live with the generous support of my friends at CIO.com and our CIO Executive Council. We're streaming live to you right now on LinkedIn and on our CIO channel on YouTube. And we welcome any of our alert viewers today to send in questions of your own to my guest. We'll be watching for those and doing our best to pass them along. And I'm very pleased today to welcome my guest of the week here is Bryson Koehler. He is the Chief Product Data Analytics and Technology Officer at Equifax. Atlanta-based Equifax is a more than $5 billion global data analytics and technology company and one of the 3 national credit reporting bureaus in the United States. It employs more than 14,000 people worldwide and operates across 24 countries. It's also serving consumers and businesses across a diverse span of industries and government agencies. Bryson joined Equifax in June 2018, having earned a reputation for AI and cloud expertise after he served as CTO and general manager at IBM, where he drove the efforts to bring IBM Watson together with a full suite of cloud-native capabilities. Before his time with Big Blue, Bryson was the Chief Technology and Information Officer at the Weather Channel Companies, which was acquired in 2015 by IBM. As a prominent member of Georgia's technology leadership community, Bryson currently serves on boards of directors for the Technology Association of Georgia and the Atlanta CIO Advisory Board. And in June 2019, about a year after he took on his role at Equifax, he also took on his first public board seat, joining the New Jersey-based Anywhere Real Estate Incorporated, where he serves on the audit, technology, and data committees. Bryson, welcome. It's so cool to have you here today.
Oh, it's great to be here and great to see you and looking forward to our conversation. Thanks for
I know, me too. All right, I have to start with a little backstory from you about that expanded title of yours. As we were talking about before we got going today, I run into a lot of chief information officers that have other functions in the business that are part of their title, but yours starts with chief product, and that packs a lot of responsibilities in there and is unusual among CIOs. And I guess you're hoping to get a trend started here. It's a real product mindset. And so I want you to talk a little bit about how that has come about and what it means to Equifax.
Yeah, so I think, look, I put product first because I want us to be product-led, right? I believe that being a product-led organization really helps us serve consumers and serve our customers around the world the best way.
Yeah.
When I arrived at Equifax, it was clear to me that we were really good at doing projects for customers. Customer would ask for us to do something and we sure would whip up a project.
Sure.
We would build that project. We would deliver that project. And, we had created thousands of these projects. We called them products, but really they were projects all over the world, right? And when you think about that in a legacy world, it kind of makes a lot of sense because you've got your data centers, you've built out your VM farms, and you really don't have multi-tenancy. You really have the ability to, well, that's a new app, it's a new deployment, that's a new customer, let's just build, deploy, copy, paste. And that just over time, a couple of things happen. One, it becomes very hard to maintain that sprawl.
Yes.
And that's really what started our transformation 4.5 years ago, was the recognition that we had to get really good at how we built and ran the technology that we have that powers our company.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that happens is that it's hard to keep all of those apps rising up at the same level, right? Because you want to now invest in new technologies, new capabilities, bring new data assets into the decisioning flow. you
Mhm.
really want to constantly evolve. But if everybody's got their own code base, if everybody was built off their own project, it
Yeah.
really becomes very hard for that to occur. So, while we started our transformation with a technology mindset, right, really
Mhm.
getting to the cloud, getting into our cloud native mindset, really understanding that we were going to not just move, not lift and shift, not migrate, but rebuild
Mhm.
our technology on the cloud. The immediate next chapter was product, and
Well,
that's where
and
we hired our chief product officer, because we wanted to really establish that these would be multi-generational product views, and that
okay.
our product for the auto vertical, or the product for the mortgage vertical, or our identity or fraud verticals, if you go across our portfolio of capabilities, each one of those has now its own multi-generational product plan. It
Mhm.
has a product management organization around it that is balancing the investment of building a new feature, upgrading an old feature. How all of those investment trade-offs are done are now really very tightly integrated, and it's very hard to separate the tech team and the product team. So, that's really where that came about, was
Yeah.
that, we wanted to be product led. We wanted to make sure that we were breaking the mold of how we worked in the old days. We still wanted to listen to customers. We
Mhm.
still wanted to take in market feedback. We still wanted to follow the competition. But now that's the job of a product manager. That product mindset of really understanding the market, understanding customer needs, and then synthesizing all of that down into a roadmap that an engineering team can execute against. That is really the way, forward.
Mhm.
And for us, being now cloud native, being able to have multi-tenancy for many customers on a common platform, I mean,
Yeah.
really, that's just the modern way to build software.
Well, and
And, we're taking full advantage of that.
and there's something about project versus product that sounds very internally focused or externally focused. And when
Yeah.
your engineers are concentrating on a product and its lifespan, they're thinking products don't really, unless you sunset something, they don't really come to an end. There's something that keeps getting improved and adjusted and upgraded, as happens a lot with anything on the cloud.
And I think on that, I mean, customers, big forklift upgrades,
Mhm.
software that kind of hits the end of its life. And now you've got to go through this mass upgrade project. Like, nobody has time for that anymore,
It's
right?
true.
We're all way too busy. And so the beauty of the cloud, the beauty of having, multiple regions, blue-green deployments, all of this technology speak we always have.
Mhm.
The beauty of that is now you can constantly keep that product evergreen. You're
Yeah.
always investing in it. You're keeping it current. You're upgrading the componentry behind the scenes. The days of having to have our customers go through these monolithic forklift migration upgrades, we
Mhm.
want that to be in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. Well, now much has been reported, and you've been interviewed numerous times in recent years about this Equifax's cloud story, about this full-scale move to cloud native operations. Bring us up to date on where you are in that journey, because I know enough about big technology transformations that there is never any single end point. There are things that get accomplished, but the moment you stop, it's like sharks stopping in the ocean. You don't stop because you'll die if you do.
Sure.
Transformation is constant. So tell us where you are in the journey and some of the things that are coming for it next, perhaps in the next
Yeah,
year or so.
the definition of scope of transformation is certainly an entertaining topic, and one
Yeah.
that we battle all of the time, trying to, make sure we are being, true to where did we start? We've
Mhm.
done over $3 billion worth of acquisitions since we started our official transformation. So the integration of a new acquisition, well, is that integration? Is that transformation? What if they need to go through their own transformation? Is that now part of transformation? Where does
Right.
it end, right?
Yeah.
So we've been very clear that, for us, transformation was around the original estate that we started with.
Mhm.
Um, and we have a separate, robust process for integrating the acquisitions that we do, and bringing them up to our standards. And so we've come a long way. We have around 70% of our revenue today running on our transformed environment. We're doing a really good job migrating customers, completing the work. We have decommed over a dozen data centers. I think hopefully, if we can, do well this year, we'll double that number this year in terms of the total number of legacy data centers we've decommed. And so the work in the United States will be mostly done this year. Customers migrated, legacy systems decommed. We're very excited about that. Same goes for Canada, which is great. Several of our countries down in Latin America, most of the build work in India is done. All but a little bit of the build work in Europe is done, with everything else migrated and shut down. So we're going to be in a really great spot by the end of this year. And if you look in the U.S. today, all of us have, probably had some version of a mainframe rebuild or migration or some sort of big, hairy project that we've taken on in our careers. Our U.S. mainframe, which has been in existence for over 40 years, was a big, complicated assembly beast. And, that team is code complete on that rebuild, and now really in that, final slog of customer migration. And so in many ways, the hard engineering efforts are done. And now we're in that, let's get the migrations and decom of the old done. You're not done with transformation until you unplug the old. You have to actually unplug the old, not get it down to, well, there's only 2 customers left over there. No, that's not done. Done is we've unplugged it. And that's what we're working towards. So it's going well.
Well, and I think that it's transformations have to be waves or phases where, I remember how 3 to 5 year roadmaps have always been very popular in our technology industry. And for a while, everybody said, well, you really can't plan 5 years ahead anymore. But I hear a lot more about that kind of planning now, and it's more of road mapping going forward. And that may be that rolling wheel of transformation is what is going to be happening next, and which customers is it going to impact. That's how I hear it discussed a lot now.
I think that's right, and I think that's why I call it our multi-generational roadmap, right? A Gen 3, Gen 2, Gen 1. And it's a level of, at a Gen 3 roadmap level, which may be 3 to 5 years out, you have a pretty coarse grained view of level of specificity. Maybe that's, the first half of a year or the second half of the year. And then as you get into that, 2 to 3 year, Gen 2 view, maybe you're down to the quarter, right? And as you get into the Gen 1 and into the current year, you're down to the month. Right. So it's also just a gradient around how specific you can be into exactly when you'll deliver when. But I think it is important, not just for your own teams, but for your customers. Because, what I believe to be true is that customers are not really buying a solution for what it does right now today. Right. Because there are very few perfect solutions out there. I mean, what software that you use is perfect, right? Probably, to me at least, and maybe my bar is high, but very few.
I bet it is. It's probably higher than mine, Bryson.
Right. It's not, but you're investing in a relationship. You're investing in the company behind the software. Are they going to keep investing in it? Are they going to keep innovating it? Are they going to keep making it better? Right. And as long as they're going to continue to invest and make it better, then you're placing a bet on them versus that specific tool. But in order to do that, you kind of have to know where they're going. So I think it's important for us to be able to tell our customers where we're going, talk about that in a multi-generational view, but not get so specific that we're backed into a corner where they're now counting on it when we're not yet ready to commit to it. And that's that balancing act that you've got to get right. And again, that's why that product management discipline is so critical.
Okay, excellent. Let me take you up. I want to pivot up to a kind of a 30,000-foot view of the financial services industry and talk a little bit about the big picture impact that you've been seeing from Equifax's point of view on customers during these very disruptive last few years. Are there common problems that you end up hearing about from your other CIO peers in financial services?
I think we've seen our role over the last many years to be incredibly important, more important than an average year, and taking care of consumers, helping consumers in their own financial journey, and helping everybody live their financial best. That's really resonated with us as a company and with the team. As people are in uncertain times, having that coach, that guide, whether we're helping them secure benefits, right? There's been a lot of government benefits around the world and changes to payments. And you've seen, all kinds of forbearances and all kinds of things that governments around the world have done to help their populations navigate through the turbulent waters. We play a big role in bringing that to life and making sure that if somebody is able to gain access to a government benefit, that we help them quickly get that. If they're receiving benefits, how does that get calculated, and how does it get accounted for? How does on our customer side, how do they know what to do with all of this change in data? Employment trends have changed radically. And so, if you think about decisioning and modeling, models that have been built up over years and years and maybe decades of data and stability quickly getting disrupted, right? It put a lot of strain on the system very quickly, right? Yeah. And our job was to smooth that out as quickly as we could, continue to make sure that consumers and individuals around the world were getting access to the things that they needed to, were getting access to credit as they were going through, changes, that they could still get employed, that the background checks, would happen. One of the, product innovations we had was something we call I-9 Anywhere. If you get employed in the United States, you fill out an I-9 form and you go in and you bring your passport or you bring your driver's license, right? And the HR department validates that that's really Bryson. And that gets filed, right? And that same process exists around the world. They call it different things, but, but what happens if that office is closed? What happens if there's no way to, that office was, maybe it was moved remote. Maybe that, there's local mandates that don't allow you to meet. So we created an I-9 Anywhere product that enabled people to still get hired, still go through their I-9, but that we would have people that could come to them, right? And process that in a way that created hiring fluidity and flexibility where it was needed most. And so we were highly innovative in the last several years, reacting to just the turbulent times we're going through, and we're going to continue to do that. And it really comes back to our core purpose of helping people live their financial best.
Well, and we've got an excellent and early question from our alert audience here. Would like to know how Equifax is using predictive analytics to anticipate the customer's appetite for the different products. And that I know you and I are going to get into a lot of discussion about data analytics and decision-making with data. So thank you for that question from our audience. And
I love the question.
Yes.
And look, I think predictive AI, and that really, we could have a whole fun then topic on the chat GPT thing and everything that's going on there. Yeah. It turns out, because that's a language-based model, it only knows things up to, 2021.
And a few things have happened since 21.
That happened last week. And, really more and more our customers come to us and ask us to help them in the decision-making about the future.
Yeah.
Right. It's not so much about the past. It's more and more about the future. And so depending upon what part of the business that you're looking at, we have different types of AI in use. So in our highly regulated spaces, we use our neuro decisioning technology, which is an explainable AI capability that we have, because when you're doing a highly regulated work with our customers and helping them make decisions, you have to be able to give reason codes. You have to be able to explain why something occurred, right? So a lot of AI techniques don't really lend themselves easily to explainability. Why did that occur? Why did I get that outcome? What was the data element that was used? And so we've built some patented technology around explainability. But if you get into other parts of our business, in identity, in fraud, in marketing and other areas where you have different types of use cases, you have different types of certainty requirements. People desire for their fraud models. You think about your credit card fraud detection, right? Sometimes it's maybe too sensitive, but you would rather it be too sensitive than for somebody to rack up a whole bunch of charges on your credit card that aren't yours, right? And, there's not your credit card company's not going to explain to you exactly why they blocked that charge. They're just going to say they detected fraudulent activity and that was it. And you felt good and protected and moved on. So those are areas where we're able to use more sophisticated, predictive or prescriptive AI techniques. And so we have to use a broad spectrum of machine learning and AI capabilities, really based upon the use case that we're dealing with.
Okay. When we had talked earlier, you mentioned that one of the real top transformations was for the company as a whole was this shift from seeing yourselves as and even being a data collection, a data analysis kind of business to more of a decision intelligence company. And I love that phrase. I think it's a great way to talk about how you enable and make smarter decisions. And I know you have some examples of ways you've done this with alternative data, which goes back to the question from our audience member about predictive analytics. Is predictive analytics gotten to be an old-fashioned term, or is it still bandied about?
No, I don't think it's old-fashioned. I mean, look, there's a lot of obviously, AI is a very fast-moving field. Lots going on. In fact, MIT just yesterday, released some pretty advanced, work related to explainability, right? So every day you're seeing researchers push the envelopes of the various techniques, and so I think that we're going to continue to see that for quite some time. But fundamentally, AI works best when you can educate the machines the best, right? And so the education of the models is based off data, right? And Equifax is, very uniquely positioned with the unique data assets that we have, as well as the unique data assets that our customers bring with them. And that's really a big part of our transformation, was getting our data foundation in place, the pipeline of capability that now runs consistently in 6 different cloud regions around the world so that we can handle data residency and all of the requirements that we have. But our customers' data, our data, and other third-party data coming together, really, regardless of the type of AI approach that you take, having your data together in a common data fabric, having it in a common catalog, having rich metadata that's associated with your data elements so that you know the permissible use of what data can and can't be used. That, to me, is the first step of any AI, program, right? Because you now have the most advanced capabilities to be able to train and build robust models and the feedback loops of learning so that they can continue to get better and improve. And so the data piece is really critical. You've got to nail that first, and that was why that was the first part of our transformation, was getting our data fabric in place, re-ingesting, not just moving our databases, but re-ingesting our data creating a common keying and linking capability so that as we look at data elements and their association to people, places, and things, that we had a common view of that. That helps the machines learn faster. That helps the models become more confident, become more accurate, right? Because really you're doing all of that work to make a better decision, right? And sure, we work with a lot of customers where they want to buy the data. They want to leverage the data to help them make a better decision. And we work with a lot of customers that way. But more and more, because of the explosive amount of data that is available and the amount of public data that's out there, other signals, all kinds of things that help us make a better decision. Is this really Bryson, right? Is this the right digital identity? Is this fraudulent activity or legitimate activity? These are things where more data helps us, and people want that confidence. And so what increasingly I see from our customers is we need more help, right? We need more help in making this decision. We need more help from you. And that's the whole decision intelligence, which is at the end of the day, that customer still has to make that final call. Their risk tolerance is different. They're making that final decision on what to do. But the more we can guide them, the more valuable we are. And I go back to my days at Weather, where I spent a lot of time with the meteorology team and, really kind of always jokingly pushed on them and said, look, what is a 30% chance of rain really telling anybody?
I remember a lot of those conversations because you always, whenever we would interview you, I think I was with Computer World at that point. So we're going way back now. You always seem to be having just such a good time, with
I loved that job. I loved the weather and I loved that team, and that was a lot of fun. But giving somebody a 30% chance of rain, I always said, look, we're just pushing the problem to them. We're not really helping them make a decision. We're basically saying, I don't know, you go figure it out, right? And so we created what we refer to as the umbrella forecast. And today, if you were to ask Google, will I need an umbrella today? It will answer you in a binary way. Yes or no. It will tell you. And that was off of some very sophisticated work that we did to make sure that we were really helping answer the question, really bringing that decision intelligence to the forefront versus just shipping out a bunch of data. And I think that's the easiest way for, people to get their head wrapped around it. Was we became more valuable as a company as we helped that decision, right? And we did that in the B2B space. And, you think about flying. How much fuel am I putting on a plane? Well, that has a heavy impact on weather. Well, don't tell me exactly how many pounds. I'll pay for that. That's very valuable. So when you think about our world, at Equifax, it's very similar, right? The more we can help our customers make that decision, the more valuable we become. And that's really that move from data's important and critical and a great asset of our company. And we've built our data fabric to enable us to continue to massively grow that and do that in a very governed, permissible, highly secure way, consistently around the world. The analytics piece of that and our use of AI and machine learning against the data certainly helps. But fundamentally, all of that work and the technology that we have built is all down to helping a person or a business make a smarter decision.
Yes. Well, and all these factors that do go into the decision making, and especially with the assist from deep learning models and AI, and whether it's predictive AI, I guess most AI probably is somewhat predictive. Is that the next big technology horizon that you see your fellow CIOs, your other travelers on this technology road, is that what they're tackling now, or is the hockey puck moving elsewhere? Is there too much emphasis on the data and not enough emphasis on what's happening with the data?
I think it's all about outcomes, right? Okay. So, many years ago, we would have all celebrated, in the community, hey, Sally or Joe or Bob, you got your data warehouse project approved and through the, investment committee. Yay. Great. So now you've pulled hopefully most of your data together. You've maybe got it all somewhat normalized. You hopefully understand the permissible use around it. But really kind of, so what, now what, right? So I think the work that so many of technology leaders, data leaders around the world have been working on is how do we make sure that there's a solid ROI for our company and our business, right? And are we using that to make smarter decisions? Are we using, not to visualize it and create some fancy dashboard? I mean, dashboards are great and they're really pretty and sometimes they help tell a story, but what are people doing with it, right? Are people really making a different decision, and can you quantify that? Because it's expensive to house these digital bits, right? And the security requirements around doing so rise every year. So as much as we try to commoditize the infrastructure around it, it probably gets offset with the overhead of security and encryption and tokenization and encrypt, decrypt, and you can get into a post-quantum conversation, if you wanted to. There's all kinds of costs there. So these digital bits cost money. We've got to make sure that we're moving them into the decisioning flow of our businesses, into our products, and that we really can start to understand how did somebody actually make a different decision, because of the data we had, because of the intelligence we created, or because of the guidance that we provided, right? Sometimes what you need is a little nudge, right? Which is why sometimes you see some of these assistants today giving you a nudge. Hey, you've only got 300 more steps this hour. Hey, you probably ought to stand up. Hey, you might want to take an umbrella, right? You think about that in financial decision making. Or other types of decision making that we all make. And as executives, we're paid to make hundreds or thousands of decisions a day or a week.
Yeah.
How many of those are being infused with guidance, not just data, but guidance with a confidence understanding, so you can really start to understand that confidence score, in that. And I think that's really, to me, the next evolution of all of this work and conversation around data.
Okay, well, and good. Related to that, we've got another great question from our audience about, and it's for guidance. It's a request for advice. Advice for a new leader who's responsible for an organization's data governance initiatives. So you've got somebody who's just taken on, maybe they've got a chief data governance officer title even. But what would you recommend? What are some of the ways you think about moving forward with data governance and a new initiative around it?
So first, approach it with a very positive view. Your job is to get to yes. Your job is to get to green. Your job is to find ways for the company that you work for to leverage data to its fullest to help fulfill its mission as to whatever it's doing, right? Not stand in the way and just wall it off, right? And so I think sometimes governance roles can go sideways because it is far easier to just fire. It would be really easy to just disconnect everything from the internet because you're pretty secure there, right?
Yeah.
It is much harder to figure out how you get to yes. So do the hard work, find a way to get to yes. Make sure that the business, technology, your product teams, the marketing team, all of your stakeholders see you as a positive, can-do member of the team that is helping you get to yes. Now, to do that, you've got to do it in the right way. Right? You've got laws to abide by, you've got ethics to abide by, you've got privacy policies to comply with, you've got all of these other things that want to keep it under control.
Yeah, there may be tedious industry regulations. So. Yeah,
absolutely. And all of those really have great intent and are there with the right spirit. And your job is to thread the needle and work to understand what the rules say, what the data is, what the need is, and find a way to leverage technology, leverage people and process to make sure you stay compliant, that you abide by all of the promises and commitments and trust that you've made as a business, but do so in a way that's actually helping people move forward with their task, right?
Yeah.
And so for us, it's helping people live their financial best. So we want to use data in a positive way to help people. And so you've got to find that. And I would say to do that, it starts with your data catalog. The completeness of your data catalog down to every field, right? I mean, you may end up with 60 different metadata elements for each field of data that you have. Where did it come from? Does it expire? What encryption level does it need? Does it have to be tokenized? Where can it reside geographically? How can it be used? What are the derivative works that can be created with it?
Yeah.
You know, all of those things, if you do the heavy lifting up front, really get completeness of your catalog, and then really unblocks your data scientists, because instead of them having to file paperwork and have somebody review it and go through a review process that sometimes could take weeks or months, they now can more self-service and allow the systems to enforce the governance policies that you've written. So be positive. Really understand the stakeholders you have and make sure they know that you're there to keep them safe, but keep them moving forward. And also, you know, do the work on the catalog. That catalog work, I know sometimes it's grunt work, and sometimes it is, you know, just heavy lifting in the back room, down in the, you know, furnace boiler room, but it's worth its weight in gold in terms of acceleration of innovation.
Okay. That was a great answer. Thank you very much. And thank you again to our
And no,
audience.
I don't live that every single day. So
Well, but it's good to have an ideal, something to shoot for. Now, as every CIO, every tech leader would agree, you can't achieve any of these big business goals that you've been talking about so eloquently without having great talent. And so tell me about your staff, about how you have it organized, about how you engage and develop these different employees. We've mentioned data scientists a few times. I think you have 1,200 of them working for you. So that's a lot of that's a lot of technical people that are all part of this team. So talk about engaging with them and developing them, and what makes you popular as their chief product and data and analytics and technology officer.
You must have other data than I have, because I'm not sure I'm popular, but
well, look, you should have that data. Didn't you just tell me you need to have all that data?
I should. I don't know how to ask non-biased questions to people on that topic.
Okay.
But no, seriously, you know, I, as a leader, I think about, you know, three things every day. Number one, I want to create an environment where you love what you do, right? Life is short. Love what you do. And so making sure people are really working on the work or in the job description and in the role, working on the project that they love is really important. They've got to love what they do. And it, you know, it is, you know, important to me that that happens. Number two is that we want to set people up for success.
Okay.
Right. We want to see people be successful. Do you have the tools? Do you have the training? Do you have whatever it is you need? Are you set up for success? If you're not set up for success, it is the job of my management team, of me as a leader, of us as a leadership group to ensure people are set up for success and create a culture where people can raise their hands and say, I don't think I'm set up for success here. This is what I need. And then we've got to either help them or change the outcome that we're seeking. But nobody wants to just watch people not be successful. Like, that's not a great culture at all. So we talk very openly about that all of the time. And I spend a ton of my day, every day, making sure that every team is set up for success. Okay. And then the third is helping people become more employable, right? My job is to make you more employable. Now, I want you to stay working for me, right? I don't need attrition. I don't want you to leave.
Yeah.
But it is my commitment to you that if you work with me, I'm going to make you more employable. I'm going to teach you a new skill. That could be a interpersonal skill, could be a leadership skill, could be a technical skill, right? But I want to make you more employable. And I just have to have the courage that if I do those three things, that you'll stick with me and grow your career with me. And look, some people choose to take the skills that they've learned and go do something else. And many times they choose then to come back because they stopped learning and they're like, wait a minute, but I want to keep learning. So they come back. So those are the three things that I focus on in terms of the team, because when you work with technical people, when you work with any sort of knowledge worker, right? It doesn't have to be in technology. I mean, knowledge workers today sit in all pockets of our business. Knowledge workers are instinctively curious. Knowledge workers seek and are eager to learn. And it is, our job to create that kind of collegiate atmosphere where we can debate, where we can push, where we can, learn. But really, at the end of the day, I always say, this is Equifax.com, not Equifax.edu. And
well, I was going to ask about that. Do you have, I know Toyota has, a lot has been written about their internal university, Toyota University.
Yeah, we have a data and analytics university. We have our product and technology. We have our own, we call it, we use PDAT. For product data analytics technology, because I'm super creative. I was going to say,
we need to talk to your marketing people about PDAT.
I need help. If anybody wants to provide guidance, I'm open. But we call it PDAT University. And, we've got everything from our own curated content to courses that we have through third parties. We've got over, almost 1,000 people around the organization that have gotten a cloud certification of one size or form or factor from one type of learning, and so we just keep pushing the education bit. And that's as much about just general knowledge as it is about, our instantiation of it. And what I mean by that is we're a unique organization. We work with some highly sensitive, highly regulated data. We work in a different way. We have some of the most complicated engineering requirements really on the planet in terms of how we manage all of this. And so it's not just about, you going out and getting your Google or Amazon, cloud certification. It's about, do you also understand our engineering handbook? The philosophy that we have, the decisions that we've made, how we approach and view the world. And so, it's a mixture of those things that all come into it. And so, we're very proud of that. And we've got a great team, that spends a lot of time curating that.
Well, and I've seen references to that engineering handbook, which is something that was written just a few years ago after you arrived at Equifax. And you called it the Bible for Technology and Process. Have you thought about publishing it? Are you ever going to sell it on the open market or?
No, but I have been known to share it with some of our customers who ask.
That's neat.
Look, technology is very religious, right? There's a lot of opinions, right? And they're all equally valid and good, right? I mean, there's a million ways to solve a problem, and there's a million tools, and your opinion on the right way versus my opinion on the right way. It's all part of why I think many of us love being in technology, because we actually love that debate. But my job as the chief technology officer is to realize that I can't run a multi-denominational church here, right? I actually have to pick a few, religious decisions, philosophical decisions, right? And we have to stick with them, right? Because we've got to go in a certain direction. And so we've written those down. They work for us. They're applicable to us, but that doesn't mean they're applicable to everybody. Because everybody's got a slightly different starting point. But I do think it's important for everybody to go through the process and write it down. And I would say, look, sometimes it causes, early on in a transformation, it'll cause people to leave. Because they're just opposed
Yep.
And that's
Technology
okay.
religions get very get political
They
too. I
do,
was
and that's
thinking-
okay. And my point of view on that is, I think you have every right to believe that, and you
Mhm.
should go find a place that believes that too, and not
Okay.
try to swim upstream, right? Because we've made our decisions, we have to stick with them, and and every quarter we provide updates, so we're constantly refreshing it. We've made some bad decisions, we've undone them. New approaches have come out, we adopt them.
Yeah.
Old approaches need to fade away, we get rid of them. So we're always learning, we're always pushing. But I think sometimes where I see some technology leaders struggle is where they're just not willing to bring that debate to closure.
Okay.
And I think bring it to closure. And if that causes a few people to leave, you've done a good job.
Yeah.
Because you've actually then made firm enough decisions. If you go through all of that and everybody's kind of still okay, you've probably watered it down a bit too much.
Now, are you thinking when you talk about are you thinking about like technology, like moving to cloud native? Is that, or are you thinking in a smaller way, like a certain technical tool that everybody enjoyed using? Besides, give me an example of what got thrown out the window.
Tools, libraries, database selection, so we have our tech radar. So, what type of Linux are we going to run on, right?
Okay.
What's the open source RDBMS that we're going to use? What's the queuing, and like there's a million of those kind of software decisions.
Yeah.
Then there's technique decisions. So when you deploy on cloud, are you multi-region? Are you multi-zonal? Do you need multi-region and multi-zonal? How are you going to handle, and so I don't need every team deciding, okay, well, I'm going to use 2 zones in this region and 2 zones in that region, or I'm going to do 3 zones in one region, and that's how I did it. No. Here's our common approach to how we think about resiliency and your deployment patterns. Here's how, when we say blue-green deployment, here's exactly what we need, right? And so it's a little bit of our technology it's our kung fu. It's our style of how we have interpreted the art, and the decisions we've made. And it keeps the environment as simple as we can make it. 2, it cuts down on cycle time. I mean, look, nobody loves a good technology debate better than the average, engineer, and we can spend days and weeks rehashing a decision we've already made. None of that actually helps us move faster. So some of this is just to say, look, we've already gone through this cycle. The good news is there's always a new debate to be had, right? And so
you can distract people with the next big question, right?
Let's go work on that, and let's just accept that we've already made plenty of decisions for you. And I'd rather you be focusing on the next big thing. And again, not everybody likes that, right? And sometimes, that means that if you want to go be the jack of all trades at a startup, go be the jack of all trades at a startup. But in a big, large global corporation, I always say handymen can't build skyscrapers, right? We have to get our craft down to the expertise that is needed, because we're building a skyscraper. And a handyman could build a skyscraper. I'm not sure how long it would take. I'm not sure what the quality would be at the end. They'd probably get it done. Yeah. But wouldn't it be better to hire a concrete team that just specializes in foundation? A steel team that just specializes in steel fabrication, a glass team, the electrical team, the plumbing team. These are all craftsmen that know their craft, are good at it. And that's, to me, what you have to kind of evolve into. Some people want to be handymen. And if you want to do that you should go pursue that.
So it sounds like it's not just an engineering handbook about engineering principles. It sounds like it might be your data and your analytics and your product approach handbook. So it's
It is. It probably, in fairness, as it continues to evolve around how we think about data quality, if we think about how will we handle leveraging AI for a logical, anomalous detection of model drift or any of these more complex topics, it does evolve into that. At some point, we probably have to rebrand it, not the engineering handbook, but that's probably number 1,000 on the list of things to do.
Well, please don't call it the PDAT handbook, whatever you do.
Fine.
Okay. Now, I want in this next section here, I want to pivot over. You have often been very proud of the fact that you are you're a geek. You really enjoy technology. You're a legendary leader. You've won all those kinds of awards and everything. But you've also got a tremendous interest in technology and where it's headed. So you pay a lot of attention to emerging technology trends. You probably have teams that are also doing this, but I'll bet a lot of it rolls up to you for your thoughts on it. So with that in mind, I wanted to try kind of a lightning round with you where there've been, I've got about half a dozen technology topics here. They're all kind of predicting the future type things. You know, those articles that come out at the end of the year that says, here's what CIOs should be thinking about, you know, and they're very rarely.
What I really love is the articles that come out with them that say, and here's how we did against last year's predictions.
Yes. And you absolutely never see those, do you? All right. So I want to run some of these by you to see. And basically the question, is this more of the usual industry hype? Or is this something really happening, something that you are paying attention to? So hype versus happening. The first one on my list is computation everywhere, evolving beyond IoT to an internet of materials, where developers are embedding smart chips inside of cloth and bricks and woods or anything to create something else, like the concrete in a building might fire off an email warning before the building falls down, that sort of thing. What do you think of that? Hype or happening?
I think it's a bit hype.
Okay.
And I think it's hype because I think we have a long way to go on just getting current technologies more resilient so that they can be more trusted.
Okay.
You know, I don't know about you, but if I look at 5G on a cell phone, I find 5G to be far less reliable, far less functional than 4G LTE, right? I think millimeter wave sounds really great, but it doesn't penetrate double pane glass. It doesn't bend around corners. It does so we've in some cases created some really neat tech that I think sounds great in a lab, but then you get it out in the real world with interference and everything else. And it has become in many ways a step backwards.
Okay.
And so I think while I love the idea of IoT, and I think there's a million examples that we can see of it happening all over the world today,
Sure.
I think further advancement of it probably requires a little bit of just infrastructure strengthening so that we can rely on it, because
we definitely need 5 and 6G everywhere for starters.
But we need it, but we also need to make sure that the wavelengths that we select, that the tower placement, and you know the handoff. So we go to these micro cells. That's great, but now you're handing off your phone as you drive down the road every 300 yards, and there's 200 milliseconds, and now we're all on video calls and IP calls, and it doesn't hand off well. And it's again, I just think in many ways it's like we're going. Let's make sure we get the infrastructure to a place we can rely on it with more solid belief. And then, look, I think we live in uncertain times, and the internet in general has got some pretty significant weak points to its architecture.
Yes.
And so we also need to make sure that as we decentralize compute to the edge more and more and more and more, how does that work in a disconnected state?
Okay.
Right.
Good point.
We see every week now there's an outage somewhere for a whole region. I think T-Mobile had an outage, last week in Colorado and Denver. AT&T had one the week before. You could go around the world. Every carrier has them all of the time. We just need to make sure that before we put too much out on the edge, that we really understand the fabric of the network connectivity back to the center.
Okay. This next one might be easy to call as hype then. Decentralized finance, aka blockchain. The challenge of creating a shared version of the truth even when everybody doesn't get along or even agree on it, that chain of transactions held in the distributed ledger? Hype, or do you see it happening?
So let's separate the technology of a distributed ledger from the concept of what it brings. I think there's certainly in a high volume, high transaction world, a lot of overhead in a blockchain-based approach. And yes, there's a lot of improvements and there's a lot of great things happening, but there's still just some underlying overhead and expense in that transaction.
So we'd have to call mostly hype on this one at this point.
Yeah, and then I think the question is, what are you trying to accomplish, right? So
okay. All right.
we can still accomplish it maybe without that technology approach.
All right, next on my list, NFTs. I bet you know a lot about these, but short on the answers. We've only got a few minutes left in our session today. All right, non-fungible transactions.
I am at a loss.
NFTs.
I got gifted an NFT of myself, and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do.
So maybe it's not even hype or happening. Maybe it's just something silly, right?
It seems like a fun form of entertainment.
Yes. Okay. Next, quantum resistant cryptography. A pie in the sky idea, even admittedly in this article I saw on it, without many practical demonstrations at all. What if magical quantum computing machines were rolling off assembly lines? This could form the foundation of the next generation of protocols to protect. Hyper happening.
This is happening. It better happen, and it needs to happen faster.
Okay.
I think we need to recognize, from a nation state perspective, where quantum is publicly versus where it is privately. And the ability, once you hit about 200 qubits, for a lot of the current encryption techniques to be very vulnerable. So I think we're on a race as an industry. And I think that, whether you do lattice or whatever your quantum proof is, this needs to be reality, and we need to be working on it.
All right. And last one on my list, the metaverse, which we've all been hearing about almost to ad nauseum, transformative potential of it. Right now, it's essentially this amalgam of augmented reality, avatars, blockchain, cryptocurrency, virtual reality, Web3. Do you think, is this mostly the usual industry hype around something that is, or is it happening?
I mean, I think it's certainly happening. I think the question is, where will it be useful? I think certainly gaming and entertainment is a massive arena. There's certainly going to be areas where when you bring robotics into it, and you think about the ability for robots now to go into very difficult, dangerous situations, but still under the active control of a human who's living that out in a VR type way. I think there's a lot there. But this mindset that we're just going to, humans are social creatures. And I think, if anything, the last several years have taught us is you can only do so much Zoom before you really want to go back and actually meet people in person.
Yes, exactly. In our last few minutes here, I want to ask you about what you have learned about your own leadership style in these last few years, in your journey from the Weather Channel to IBM and Watson and AI and all that stuff, and now to Equifax. Have there been changes in the way you communicate? What do you think about that? What have you learned about yourself over the last couple of years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've learned that, I think communicating in a digital virtual way is very different than communicating in person. And so I have found that in a virtual world, I need to be way more direct than my natural style is. Okay. I'm usually a little bit more conversant, and I want to, listen and be engaging and talk to folks. And that's so much easier to do in person. Virtually, it is more difficult. Messages get morphed or warped or misinterpreted or misunderstood. And so I've found that I've had to really make sure that in a virtual mode, I'm more direct, is probably the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay. So it's had to drag you a little bit out of your comfort zone to have these more affable, because I've always thought of you as a very good conversationalist, and I'm glad we've managed to have enough time today to do
people,
that.
People do things for you because they want to, not because you told them to. And so I think as a leader, it's my job to bring you along and really help you understand the why, get you engaged at a fundamental level, have you become passionate about the outcome we're trying to create. That is best done in person. It is best done through a conversation. It is best done sometimes over a beer, right? Like we're humans, we're social creatures, and it is harder to do virtually. And so I think that's why trying to figure out how to adjust your style to that medium is something I'm still getting my arms wrapped around.
Well, and I think it's been a really fascinating learning experience for all of us over the last 3 years, because now that we are doing more things in person, there's other skills we've picked up from working online and on videos so much that I think that there's kind of an interesting amalgam happening there.
Agree.
Okay, well, you are always such a treat to talk to. Thank you for playing Hype versus Happening. That was something your communications chief and I thought that it might be really fun to engage you on that, because you have so many wide-ranging opinions on these things, and you are, let's face it, very deep into technology as much as you are product and data and analytics. Thank you so much, Bryson. It was really an honor having you here today, and I hope we stay in better touch than we have over the last few years. You have been busy, though. So thank you so much for joining us and for being with me today on CIO Leadership Live.
Thanks for having me on.
Anytime. If you joined us late today, don't despair. You can watch the full episode of this great conversation with Bryson right here on LinkedIn, but you can also find it on CIO.com and on CIO's YouTube channel. CIO Leadership Live also shows up by tomorrow as an audio podcast wherever you find your podcasts. And I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Bryson Koehler, Chief Product Data Analytics and Technology Officer for Equifax, and that you'll plan to tune in for our next Leadership Live show on Wednesday, March 8th, when I'll be talking with the CIO of Qualcomm, Cisco Sanchez. Thanks so much again for joining us today. Thanks to the great questions from our audience. And do take a moment to subscribe to CIO's YouTube channel, where you can find all of the previous episodes, more than 100 of these now, of CIO Leadership Live. I keep encouraging people to go on there and spend a weekend binging through all of them. But I don't know if anyone's done that yet, or if they tried it and it drove them insane. But in any case, thank you so much for being with us. Stay well, and we'll see you here again next time.